I started browsing the deep web, just for fun. I thought it would be a place where I could laugh at all the drugs and porn. Unfortunately, I was really wrong. I went on the Deep Wiki and started browsing the pages and links. Most were just links to drugs and legal arms sites formatted like eBay. I found it amusing how people would actually go on these sites and use it. After a while, I ran across this one link that looked a bit strange. I haven't seen it yet, so I just clicked on it and hoped for the best. I would soon learn to regret this decision. I was linked to a site that had a bunch of pictures of humans brutally mutilated. At the very least, I could describe it as extremely disturbing. I saw the site description. I clicked on it. The site's logo was, "Not everyone was created equal. We are here to prove it." I was appalled at this. I thought whoever made this site was a sick psychopath. The description continued. "We apply experiments of different variety and intensity to different people. Many are homeless civilians who wouldn't fare much better out there than here. We are doing this for mankind." Many were homeless, and some were just normal people caught up by these sick fucks. Unfortunately, the acts done to them were truly horrible. These so-called experiments could entail starvation and wear restriction, extreme pain and torture, extreme reactions to heat and cold, introductions to infections and diseases, and even infant tolerances to X-rays, pain, and heat. At this point, I'm extremely mad, and my rage is slowly building up. How could they do this to people? After a while, I finally work up the nerve to click on one of the pictures to look at the experiment and the result. In one I found especially sick and perverse. The scientists injected bleach into the womb of a 20-something-year-old woman who they made another test subject impregnate. They found that the baby died after 5 days of exposure. I see pictures of the experiment. It was horrifying, to say the least. I kept clicking and viewing other experiments. Each one was worse than the last. Eventually, I saw a whole page dedicated to infants and toddlers having experiments done on them. I got to the bottom of the page. The suffering these people had to go through. That's something no human should neither experience or witness. As I looked at the screen in complete horror, a chat box appears. "Hello, are you enjoying the site?" I reply to the random person. "Who are you?" He replies to me. "I'm the creator of the site. Don't you find this just interesting?" At this point, I'm getting extremely angry. This man is treating human life like an animal, and even less. It was truly sickening and depraved. I reply to the man, "This site is sick. How could you do this to someone?" "Now," he replies, "this is all for the good of mankind. I'm just seeing what I can prove. I'm enraged. My head isn't thinking straight. I reply mad and full of anger. "You sick bastard." Without thinking, I post something really stupid. "I'm reporting you to the police." A brief pause follows my comment. He writes. "Your name is Michael, and you live in Massachusetts." I was stunned. The information was correct. I don't know why I didn't close the browser there, but I replied, "No, you're wrong." He then proceeded to write down an address. It was my address, the full correct address. He ended the chat by saying, "Have a nice day." I closed the browser and slammed my laptop shut. I called the police before I even told my parents. The cops asked if they could see my computer to have the URL to shut it down. Unfortunately, Tor doesn't save your browser history, so I couldn't even help the cops in shutting it down. The police said they strongly recommend that we move. Luckily, this happened around the time we were looking to move anyways. Our old house sold really quickly. We moved to the new house. I kept apologizing to my parents. I felt horrible about it. I still didn't know if the guy was bluffing or not. But just yesterday, I had received a message from an anonymous sender in my email, with just a simple message stating, "Curiosity will always get the better of you. But always remember, while you are watching us, we are watching you." It was just a normal day. Our company was made to make house calls to customers who had problems with their computers. My job was mainly dealing with people who I swore didn't know the simplest thing about computers. Regardless, it was my job to inspect and fix the issue. That night, I had a huge list of people waiting to get their computers repaired. The next on the list was a business that couldn't bring their computers online. I was requested by the owner to come check it out as soon as possible. I got in my car and headed to his place. Since it was a business, I figured there may be something wrong with a network cable, or someone installed a Trojan horse by accident. I finished the drive there and entered the building. When I reached the building, the owner directed me to a computer. He said it wouldn't get online. He then continued to rant about how Microsoft Windows is horrible and other things until I pulled out my laptop to see what the problem was. I tried accessing Google on the computer. It said the URL was invalid. Since I know Google was a real site, there must be something wrong with the computer's connection. I checked the connection settings. I face-palmed at the fact that the computer was not connected to any Wi-Fi. All of the networks were locked with WEP security, so I asked the man to look for the passcode. He took a long time, so I decided to toy around on my laptop for a bit. All of a sudden, a network appeared that had no security. Me, stricken with the agony of boredom, logged on to the network. I started going on the web, looking at articles and files when my computer began to freeze a bit. I found this strange. My laptop never froze before. As time progressed, it froze more and more frequently with longer durations each time. Eventually, the browser crashed. As I was about to reboot my computer, a new browser started up, with a chat box in the middle. A random user logged on. He began typing. "This is your last warning. Leave this network now." At the time, I thought it was just a program built into this network to keep hackers away, so I paid no attention to it. It began typing again. "This is your final warning. Leave now." At this point, I'm quite impressed with the program. After all, it was well made. I could hardly tell it was a program. It wrote again. "Leave now, or else." I still don't know why I did this, but I decided to taunt it. I replied to it. Or what? The user typed, "I will make your life hell." I laughed it off. Now this program really had my respect. It was very entertaining. "This is good security," I wrote in the box. "I warned you," the man wrote. He then proceeded to write my name. This is when I began to get scared. I didn't tell him my name. "How do you know my name?" Instead of answering my question, he proceeded to name my personal information, my address, credit cards, phone number, social media account. These were all correct. Shocked, out of my mind, I sat there in complete silence. Eventually the man typed again. "Since you refuse to leave, you will see hell." The chat box disappeared. At this point, I'm rapidly pushing the disconnect button. It's not responding. The option to exit the browser and power off my computer are also disabled. As I look on the screen, I am filled with utter terror. I saw things humans shouldn't see. Murder, demonic sacrifice, rape, innocent babies being killed, and more. At the end of the video, I vomit. I couldn't take any more of this. The chat box reappears. "Leave while you still can," he wrote. I quickly shut off my computer and disconnect from the network. I don't tell the owner about this, as it would just make things worse. The owner came back and got connected to the wireless network. I rushed out of there as soon as possible. I'm lucky. I didn't hear anything of it since. I don't know what had me fooling around with illegal stuff like the deep web, but I heard that it was a place where stuff the normal internet didn't have was stored and viewed. Immediately I got interested and asked my friend how I may access the deep web. He wrote me down the instructions. After a while, I decided it was time to go home. When I got home, I looked at the card he wrote the instructions on. It said I needed a browser called Tor to access it. Needless to say, I got the search engine and read on. Next, it said I needed to find a page called Hidden Wiki. After a while of searching, I found it. I saw a bunch of nameless links. In the Hidden Wiki, links are given without a name or description. People can only find out what's inside a link by clicking on it. After numerous sites filled with child porn, drugs, and hitman for hire, I came across a link I have yet to discover. I click on it to see a video. I pressed play. I saw nothing but a wall. I stared at it for a few minutes. Just as I was about to exit, something was emerging through the wall. I waited and watched longer to discover it was a man with a mask. "Hey there," he said. Thinking this was a prank video, I just kept watching. After a while of me just staring at the screen, he began to speak again. "Aren't you going to speak?" he asked. I proceeded to type on the keyboard. "Not the keyboard. Speak," he said. At this point, I was a bit frightened. "Who are you?" I asked. "I'm your friend," he proceeded to say. At this point, I'm scared. My face is full of terror. I begin to start showing my fright. "Come on, friend. Don't give me that scared face," he said. This is when I got extremely frightened. "Just 1 second, my friend. I will get your address so I can talk to you in real life." He proceeded to type on his computer. Frantic, I tried to close the window down and get out of the video. "That won't work," he said. Before he had time to track my address, I got a screwdriver, removed the back and battery from my laptop. It's been some time now, and he hasn't come. He didn't have enough time to get my address. Or did he? When I was younger, my friends and I would use the Ouija board to fool around and play with. We started getting cold spots. We decided to see what would happen if we put something in them. We put a lit candle in them. The candle blew sideways. Knowing now this probably wasn't a fake, I decided to ask it a question to confirm it was indeed true. What was the name of the cruise ship I went on when I was 8? I was shocked to find out that it actually knew the name. But this is when it begins to get scary. We were asking the board how long we had to live. My friends got 50 or 60 plus years of life to live. I went up to the board and asked it the same question. It said 10. I asked if it meant 10 years. It said 10 days. At this point, I shit a brick and turned as white as a ghost. We proceeded to ask the spirit how I was going to die. It said I was going to be killed in a car crash by a girl named Emma. We ended the session and I went home. I was really scared. I wanted to see if it was a one-time thing, so I decided to go back to my friend's house 3 days later. I drove to my friend's house and we set up the board. We asked the same question. This time, it said I had 7 days left. This made me even more frightened, and I decided to check it out again 2 days later. We used the boat again. It said I had 5 days left. I go home. I begin carrying a Bible and a huge cross with me everywhere I go. I was so afraid I would die. That was something I didn't want to happen. I was way too young. Because of that fear, I decided I should tell my dad about what happened. At first, he didn't believe me. I went on and on, but he thought it was a ploy for me to get out of school. I began desperately thinking of ways to prove what I was saying was true. I made a homemade Ouija board out of a piece of paper and a CD. It worked, and my dad was creeped out. He said I didn't have to go to school the day I was supposed to die. I didn't go to school that day. Nothing happened. That board saved my life. Without it, I may be telling this story from a Ouija board right now. A day later, I had heard of a teenager who died in a car crash right outside my house. Her name was Emma. My mom used to be into the tarot with my dear grandmother. I loved my grandmother very much. She used to tell me all these interesting stories about how she survived World War II. She told me when she was younger, she was friends with a gypsy queen. The woman told my grandmother when she died, all the powers would be transferred to her. So one day, my grandmother was able to perform witchcraft and do the tarot cards. My mother could also do this. They did many things, but never used it to do bad unless something bad was done unto them or other people they cared about. Do you know the terms, "It comes back threefold"? Well, that's what happened. My grandma suffered severe health problems until passing away about 2 years ago. I was really sad at that time. My mother turned into a devout Christian and wouldn't touch those cards or witchcraft if her life depended on it. I, on the other hand, am a huge skeptic of the supernatural. It took my having weird and unexplainable experiences to at least take it into account. Naturally, I started fooling around with the cards. The readings I gave were surprisingly accurate. Eventually, I was able to persuade my mom to do a single reading for me. She did the cards and started interpreting them. Once she fell on a certain card. She grew silent. I asked her what it was, but got no reply. After practically begging her to tell me, she told me these words: "You, or someone close to you, will be faced with death, but will be saved by someone out of the family." At this time, the words pierced me a bit. However, I'm very cocky. I laughed it off. I didn't take it seriously. She continued the reading. It was a lot of fun. However, strange things began to happen in the house. I woke up the next morning to my mom frightened out of her mind. She held the phone in her hand. I asked her what's wrong. She told me my aunt was dying because her artificial trachea was dry and she was suffocating or something like that. And the maid saved her at the last minute. If the maid wasn't there, she would have died. It would have been spooky enough if the story ended there, but it didn't. I was a bit perplexed, but I found it fun in a sort of sick way that the cards predicted this. I was concerned, of course, but she's all right, and now I know what it actually can do. I went to check the cards to do another reading. I thought, if it predicted something once, it could do it again. I was shocked to see a card was missing. We just checked it when we put it up. There was no way we could have lost it. I searched through to find that the Devil card was missing. It was odd because, depending what card was missing, the people in my life would act accordingly. Like when the Devil card was drawn, people were more aggressive. This freaked me out. New cards would go missing, and I would have to deal with it accordingly. At this time, the Death card is missing. The people around me are becoming sick and having suicidal tendencies, all of which somehow come to bite me in the ass. It's like karma's sick way of paying me back. Then I started seeing things in my room. I saw shadowy figures out of the corner of my eye. One time, I saw a shadow dart past my TV. I found this frightening because the TV was right next to my bed. However, I'd always find a way to outsmart whatever it was tormenting me, and it'd leave me alone. It was all just little things, until one night. I was walking down the stairs, and I felt something push me forward with a hard force. I fell from the top of the stairs. Luckily, I was able to control my movement in air and land on my feet with only a sprain or a slight fractured ankle. If I hadn't controlled my fall, I could have easily broken my neck. Another night, I decided it was a good idea to sleep in the guest room. It has a Tempur-Pedic bed and was very comfortable. Around 4 a.m., I was still up and decided I should lay down. I heard a raspy voice yell my name. At first, I thought it was my dad, but my dad's voice isn't that deep. I was a bit spooked, but nothing big. But then, The covers levitated off my feet. I silently screamed and kicked the covers till they fell. I was sleeping with a fan at that time, so I tried to recreate it. It wouldn't even raise it a little. I right away noticed a pattern. The way it was tormenting me was based off the 5 senses: hearing, touch, sight, smell, and taste. I put on my headphones loud and raised the covers over my head. I suddenly smelt and tasted something like sweet roses, and then a bad smell. I kept the covers over me. I felt something get on the bed and get close to me. It started poking me all over my body. It eventually stopped after a good 10 minutes. This is it. The last thing it could use was sight. I kept the covers over my head and body as I felt someone watch me. It was really cold. After a while, I felt it go away. I slowly brought the covers down from my eyes. Standing in the doorway, leaving me paralyzed in fear, was a glowing figure with dark eyes and pale skin that resembled my grandmother. She looked me deep into my soul and said, 3.